Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the LEI'D Back Life podcast. In this case, our second episode. Last week, you heard me talk at you about what to expect from this podcast. And now we're moving into more of our consistent format where you get to hear from people way smarter than me about their take on how you can own a business that you're proud of and live a life that's even better. One of those people, one of my favorite of those people who was willing to be the go-to guinea pig on our first interview show, someone I've known for a very long time, Steve Fretzin. Be That Lawyer, has his own podcast, has 450 episodes. Fretzin.com, Fretzin, has multiple books, and just like a genuinely great human being who really wants to help lawyers through biz dev, building that book of business to give them the opportunity to have a great life. It was so easy to me when it came time to figure out who's going to be my first interviewee. And Steve, thanks for being with us.
Hey, Jordan, I appreciate all the kind words, man, and it's mutual. We've been buddies for many years now, and it's always been just a great pleasure collaborating and referring, and anything we can help each other out with. We seem to find ways to do it.
Yeah, well, look, I think as much as lawyers get that egotistical asshole rep, which is totally correct for many of our colleagues, there's a ton of lawyers that genuinely care and went to law school to help their clients. And so there's a ton of people in the legal industry really trying to empower these lawyers to spend more time doing better work for more clients while not burning themselves out. And so it's really easy to connect when, you with your father and then me with myself and my wife, like have a very good connection to the legal industry in a way where we want to help.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what you do, and then let's go deeper from there into the life aspect of all this, how we can run that business we can be proud of and live a life that's even better through biz dev.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. The way I typically like to start any kind of conversation like this is just to share that I'm not an attorney. I'm someone who had a lawyer father who, grilled me on the regular as a teenager, and I appreciated that, when he'd write 14 pages of notes on a 12-page contract and then show them to me over 3 hours, that that he was very creative in how he would represent me and his other clients that needed things. But ultimately, I never really thought about being a lawyer myself. However, I always had a passion for relationships and a passion for sales. And I got into my own sales coaching business in 2004. And then in 2008, when the recession hit, that's when I absolutely got pulled into the legal space. Not kicking and screaming, but I definitely got pulled in for the right reasons. An industry that is so neglectful of its people in no education on any formal business and business development, business marketing in law school, and generally at the law firm level. It's just learn the law, become a great practitioner. Very important, can't argue that. But without the training to be able to do the business side, it makes it very difficult for lawyers to be successful and live their best lawyer's life. So I found that between my sales-free methodologies and the need in the industry, that it made a lot of sense to sort of push my chips in and focus on this wonderful industry that, by the way, Jordan, has completely embraced me as one of their own. And I have some of the most amazing relationships across the world because of my, again, passion for working with lawyers and helping them to live their best lives, and business development being one of the key ways to get there.
I love it. And it's amazing to me how, you mentioned how little of this we're taught in law school. Like truly, I mean, and this to your dad, like it's 3 years of this is how everything can go wrong and think critically through it. It is not how to run a practice. It's not how to treat people. It's certainly not how to generate business. And I think that's what gets lawyers in trouble, because it's really easy to say no to everything because we're trained that way without knowing what makes sense for us to do.
Right. Yeah. So it's you gotta look at the holistic picture of what lawyering means today, different than what it meant 20 years ago. That the key to success is being a great lawyer, and then the other part of it is, do you have your own clients, and are you really controlling your future and controlling your day and your destiny, or are you being told what to do every day and where to sit and where to go and work with this client and that client? So that's really kind of been my thing is trying to help lawyers sort of open up their eyes to understand that you can go your entire career just billing hours, or you can take the other route.
So when you take this other route, when you have control of your clients, how does that impact your life?
Well, the easiest way to explain it is, so if you're a billable, worker bee lawyer, and you have, let's say, four attorneys, senior partners, et cetera, that are floating work your way, okay, and you're happy to have them because you need those billable hours to make your money each year. On top of that, you have 5 or 10 clients, 15 clients that you're working with. Really, it's like having 15 or 20 bosses. I hate to say it like that, but that's in some sense what it's like. And do you have control over your vacations? Do you have control over your revenue? Do you have control over, if things go bad with the firm, or if the economy changes, or if your partner, you have a bad partner, a tyrant partner, that you have the ability to make changes in your life that are best for you other than quitting and then trying to start over somewhere else? The answer is typically no. So the idea is that if you can start incorporating branding and marketing, and most importantly business development, into your lawyer game and become a student of it, the opportunity for you to start developing your own clients and building your own book of business gives you a lot more control, not only where you are, but where you may want to go as it relates to if things don't go well with the firm or the economy changes. You have the ability to go out on your own. You can move laterally. You have what's called a portable book of business, and worker bee lawyers just don't have that.
Well, also, like, correct me if, or I guess correct me if I'm wrong. I would love to hear your opinion on this. If I'm talking to that lawyer who's sitting here, like, I'm going to open up my firm, I have no clue what to do. I think so many people tell them to start with what kind of work you want to do. I actually tell them to start with who do you want to help, and then figure out what sort of work makes sense for that person. Are you with me on that?
I'm with you. I think there's a few more factors. Maybe it's what type of work you enjoy, because if you want to help people in litigation, but you hate litigation, that you're right, that's going to be problematic. I want to be a criminal attorney because I want to help criminals or people that maybe aren't criminals. But I'm no good in court. So there's elements there, and then there's also like, what's the ability to scale up? What's the amount of business that exists in the area? Like if you're in a small town and you're going to say, I'm going to focus on litigation, big stakes litigation, but you're in a small town, like how's that going to work, right? And now it might work better today than it did 20 years ago because of Zoom, or 10 years ago. But ultimately, I think you have to look at a lot of different factors: what you enjoy, where the business is, what's the community you want to help. And if you can put all that together, and then figure out how to market it, which is where we come in, right? Helping them figure out how to actually bring in those clients. That's going to be a really nice way to get started, and to be, have a better chance of success than, again, just winging it.
Well, and I love the thing you mentioned about Zoom. There was this article I read, had to be at least 10 years ago. It was a firm in Texas, I think it was Houston, and they did a bunch of this like IP work out of California. So the firm is located in Texas. They buy a private jet. It was like cheaper for them to fly the jet over there, station everybody at a nice hotel for a week, and meet with clients in person and come back, than it was to, live in LA or wherever it was week to week. And now I think with Zoom, like Zoom is that private jet, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know how many people we meet in person. But anyway, so when it comes to business development, here's the question that I'd love to get your take on. Is there a certain type of person on the lawyer side who is better at biz dev? Is there a certain thing like they should be looking for from themselves, a mindset, an ability, a amount of time for this to make more sense for them?
Yeah. Well, the introvert extrovert, you know, thing comes up all the time. I mean, that's, people that are the glad handing, outgoing, lampshade on the head at the party people, seem to be the natural rainmakers. They say, oh, that person's a natural rainmaker. And that used to be true. And they were the ones glad handing at the private golf club and all that. And today it's really not the case. I think it's about, does a lawyer have the motivation to grow a book of business? Can they adapt and improve and just be themselves, but also understand that, you can be an introvert and you can work around, like, hey, I don't want to go to these big parties, but I can focus my energies in small group, or I can focus my energies in one-on-ones and get just as much traction as someone that's attending the big conferences or walking around the big event with the drink in the hand. So I don't really think it's introvert extrovert. I used to think that it was. It's really not, because most of the successful like IP attorneys and other attorneys I work with that are very, very high introverts do incredibly well with me because what I'm providing for them is planning and process and structure and things that they can really gobble up. And once they internalize it, then they own it and then they can do whatever they want. It's actually interesting. Sometimes the outgoing people are even tougher to wrangle because they're so either set in their ways or they can't handle rejection or they're just too disorganized where I've got to try to figure out like how to get them to follow a process because they're all over the place. So it's really a mixed bag, but I would say it's most important is what's their motivation to grow and change, and are they coachable? And if those things exist, I don't care what someone's personality. I mean, if somebody's an Eeyore, a miserable person, unhappy person, and everywhere they go, it's clear they're unhappy. That's going to be a tough road to follow. But generally, I'm working with very nice, friendly, wonderful attorneys with different personalities that all have the ability to do well.
And Steve, I don't think you've ever seen me with a lampshade on my head, but that is
Seeing
me.
you with
My
a
wife.
Hawaiian shirt, that's like one
Oh,
step off, right?
sure. All right, fair. No, but what you said is so true because like my wife is almost as introverted as I am extroverted. We will go to some large event and I'll be like, oh my God, I saw so and so and I saw so and so and we talked to this and this. My wife's like, I met this one person and now we're best friends. And then like sure
Yeah,
enough, within like 2 days, that person will send us some crazy PI case. And I'm
yeah.
just like, oh my God, you freaking introverts and your ability to just like, we are gonna connect one-on-one right here. Here we are in the moment. Dude, I love that.
Yeah.
So you've got this person, they're interested in change, they're coachable, they want that portable book of business, they want to have the leverage to, be able to do what they want from a life perspective. What are they doing to do this biz dev? Like what are some of the examples of the steps that they're taking?
Well, I mean, I can speak to the ones that are engaging me. Number one is I'm putting them in a skills class, and that's something that doesn't really exist out there. But I've been running this class for 20 years, and I've got lawyers from around the world that attend. And what they're doing is they're learning all these skills and honing all these skills that they never learned in law school. For example, how to work a conference and be effective in your time in a conference and getting actual and real results from a 3-day conference. How do you effectively network and meet someone for coffee and make the best use of that time? How are they getting in front of more decision makers and actually locking up the business in a sales free way? So everything is a learned skill with process and language that makes it easy to digest. And so it's funny, I did a role play in my class where it was everybody in the room against me. I was the prospect and they were the lawyer, and I had them tagging in and out. And the comment that was made at the end of the meeting, because it was fun to watch and take part in, was that everybody was in lockstep with each other, that they could take over at any point in that conversation because they knew this process to follow
Uh,
that walks a buyer through a buying decision without selling. And it was just like I just was so happy and elated with the way they handled it and the way that the commentary after. So that combined with coaching one-on-one, because I've got people in every practice area, big law firm lawyers, solos, and everything in between. I've got lawyers in Saudi and Canada, and I got lawyers in Iowa. So I have to have some unity that they have together as a team, as a group, and then obviously I have to pull them out individually and work with them one-on-one to ensure that when they're making mistakes or if they're doing something that's a great win, they can replicate the win or they can improve from the mistake. And that's the key to success. It's that gradual incremental improvement of learning, having a failure, and then what can we take away from it that's going to make you stronger and better next time. In over about a year's time, these lawyers who, many of them have no idea what they're doing, know exactly what to do every day, every week, every month to grow business and build those relationships. And that's been my joy has been working with these lawyers over the last really 16 years.
and I want to jump in on I don't understand why lawyers see sales as a four-letter word. But before that, we've got a newsletter that comes out every Friday, 3 p.m. This Friday, we're going to give you I'm going to give you, I write this from scratch, the 10 best chat GPT prompts for a law firm. So I want to go through, I've been using chat GPT for so many things. I hope all of us have. It always cracks me up. You go to law school, they're like, if you use a template or copy, we will kick you out. You become a lawyer and they're like, if you don't use the template, we will fire you. So we've got our 10 best chat GPT prompts. We'll walk you through how to do it for some of the biggest things for law firm owners. But let's get back to the sales thing. I don't know what job is more focused on sales than law. Like, forget the we as business owners are trying to sell clients and hiring us, but like, we're trying to sell a jury on our truth. We're trying to sell a judge on our case. Like, law is the sales job of all sales jobs, and yet we hate it, or so many lawyers do. I love that you've had this focus on it. So, like, walk me through a little bit more of how you're helping lawyers make that shift to
Yeah.
sales-free selling, because it's not being salesy.
Right. So everyone that's been in law for a while, especially at a small, mid-market, large firm, knows that they call sales meetings pitch meetings. Hey, we're going on a pitch meeting. Well, right there, just in the language, it's essentially we're going to go in, we're going to talk about us, we're going to talk about how great we are, we're going to hear their problems, start giving them solutions, talk about rates, and then hope for the best. So there's buyers and there's sellers, and they're not really working collaboratively or collectively anymore. It's more about the buyers controlling the meeting, the buyers getting what the buyers want, all the information, all the free consulting, and just using lawyers essentially as toys to get what they want. And by the way, we as buyers do that all the time. If I'm meeting 3 electricians, or if I'm looking at 3 cars, or I'm looking whatever it might be, it's just the way that people buy and the way that people sell needs to change. And so I identified this 20 years ago when I came up with the concept of sales-free selling, that why can't buyers and sellers work together to solve the problems of the buyer in a way that is all about them? So it's going to be more relationship. It's going to be more trust building. It's going to be a lot of asking questions and really understanding them at a level that most lawyers wouldn't understand. So I have lawyers that have pitched for 10 years and they go through my program, and the aha moment is, I've been doing this all wrong this whole time. If I just sit down and just ask a ton of questions, let them dig their own hole of how bad things are and how badly they need to change, they believe that I'm the right person to solve it because I asked all the great questions. And of course, I do have the ability to solve it. And fees are going to be secondary, on the list of what they really care about. They just want me to be their lawyer. They're bought into that. And so it's a way to get business without ever having to really talk too much or convince or sell or pitch or any of it. And so the lawyers I work with are just, their heads explode because they can't believe how easy it is to close business. And they really haven't said very much, especially about themselves, which is eye-opening to attorneys that thought it was all about selling the sizzle of the steak or selling their pedigree. I was with Kirkland, or I was with whatever, or I went to Harvard, and nobody cares.
Right. I mean, and that's look, I think the ultimate luxury is somebody does a consultation with me to hire me for my coaching services, and I decide I don't want them because there isn't the right fit. It's so wild to me how many these sales conferences try to get you to like close everybody. But like, we had a hurricane last week, or when you guys are listening to this, hopefully it wasn't last week, it was several weeks ago, but I get one every 2 weeks. I had so many clients texting me, "Are you okay? Do you need anything? Like, how's your house?" Because we truly found that right fit where like I bought them as a client just as much as they bought me as a coach or solution to their problem. It's so much better for everybody, and your mental health and your life, and answering the phone when, a client calls. Like, it's wild to me the difference that this makes.
Yeah. And the transition is that when you have a system and a process to follow that has been proven effective, and you get into it and you realize it's effective, it provides a lot of, to your point, a better fit with client and lawyer. It saves a lot of time. You're not chasing after anybody anymore because you know if somebody's a fit or not right in that first meeting, second meeting. And you also are so efficient that you end up, really, identifying who the best clients are for you, so that your time is actually pretty open, and you're billing hours, you're marketing your law practice, and you're spending time with your family and friends and travel and whatever you want to do. So it's a great way to build out your legal career, as opposed to it just being one-sided where, your billable hours, or you're out just pitching stuff.
So when it comes to that, you said spending time with family and friends, is that separate from business development, or is there an overlap between some of these people?
So I've heard the term, balance a lot in the last number of years. And then the one that I heard recently that I loved was, and I could be using the wrong language, but something like, work-life integration. So just as an example, I will take calls from my clients on the weekends and evenings. Like I don't put a stopper on that. However, if I'm in the middle of dinner, I'm not picking up my phone. If I'm on a boat fishing with my son, I'm not picking up on the phone. So I think it's I'm integrating my business into my life, but on my terms, not on the terms of my. And by the way, lawyers think like they have to be on call all the time and everything because they're in employment or there are people, VAs, answering services. There's all kinds of options to buffer, that you're not just taking all these calls all the time. And you can also set expectations with your clients about, I'm going to be away for the next 4 days, or, I'm not taking calls at night, but you can leave me a voicemail and I will get back to you the next morning within 24 hours. Like as long as we set expectations, we can have that. But I don't know that when I go away to Paris for 7 days, even though my email says I'm out for 7 days, I'm not going to respond to emails, or I'm not going to take a call if it's something, because there is downtime. It's not, there are, siestas and things that, where you can take a break and you can, especially if you love what you do and you care about your clients and you want, so I think that's really what I'm hoping people are taking away, that you can make it whatever you want, but I'm more of an integration guy than it's either I'm doing this or I'm doing that, but I'm not going to let them mix.
Gotcha. Well, and then like there's always those weird moments, right? So I remember my wife, my son, and I did a 13-month cross-country road trip, and we
Who
were
could forget?
hiking somewhere. I bring it up as often as I can, and then I get the time hop photos every day from where we were.
Yeah.
But there was this one time we were hiking somewhere on the West Coast. I want to say it was like in the Redwood Forest, and we went over this ridge, and my wife's phone rings. Like we had no cell reception until this one spot, and she looks at the number, and it was one of the adjusters. She's like, "Okay, I'll take this call." And it was like her largest settlement ever at the time. And it was just like they called at the 1 second that we had, like she was supposed to
Yeah.
take this phone call to finish out this case to go through it. And mind you, if she didn't answer, it would have gone to the office where there are plenty of people working and whatnot. It was just like one of those, this is, any higher power you believe in telling us like what you're doing is great. And like, here's proof that things will work itself out in weird moments. So I love
Yeah.
that work-life integration.
Yeah.
Do you see, is it more common to have clients or referral sources become friends, or to have friends or colleagues become clients and referral sources? Like, do you see a difference in direction there for a lot of your clients?
My father, the late great Larry the lawyer, I talk about him on my podcast all the time, but his saying was, if you can't make a sale, make a friend. First of all, I was impressed that he used the word sale. But that was kind of his jam. Like, look, don't get
Instead of
upset if you
pitch?
don't. What was that?
Instead of pitch?
Just no, right. Pitch, sale. I mean, just, again, these are words that lawyers despise generally. But he got it. He understood, what it was, and that's okay. The idea though is, I think there's a lot of lawyers that spend a tremendous amount of time with their clients. They build a relationship, and they can bring that to a social side of it. And I think that's important to do if you can, because it's harder to leave a friend, and it's harder to, if you're building in so much value and loyalty in that relationship, it makes it challenging to leave, versus it being just a transaction. So I think that's the one side that might be easier for attorneys. The harder side is I have all these friends, and this is what I call like lawyers living in the friend zone. And I like to do the air quotes with that. And they're GCs and they're CEOs and they're neighbors and they're at the temple and the church and they're all over the place. And they just don't have the guts to bring up business to them because they don't want to, mess up the friendship. And I have to work them through that, because ultimately it's like, look, you're the best lawyer around. Your friends need the best lawyers around. Who better than you to represent them? It's not going to screw up the friendship as long as you don't, mess up their case or whatever. Let's work some language, and let's work some approaches to develop that friendship and the business together. And 9 out of 10 times that's going to work out really, really well. But it's not easy to do it, but it's important to do.
Well, and I find the benefit is telling stories, but then obviously from the lawyer perspective, we have confidentiality. So like for me, when I started out doing criminal defense, I had the most ridiculous stories when I was a prosecutor. It's like, I don't have a client. It's all public record. I could share whatever. And it was like guys driving downtown Orlando, with his knee shooting out the window while popping oxy, and Guy tells the cops he has to go to the bathroom while they're questioning him. They won't let him go, so he poops on the table. Like the most ridiculous stories. And then as I told those other lawyers, they're like, "Oh yeah, okay. Like now Jordan can help people through those crazy things." It's just yeah, and it was such. I mean, one, I had to put food on the table for my family, but two, like I like being funny. I hope I'm funny. It was like genuinely funny and interesting things to talk to people about that also happen to be the work that I would handle.
Yeah. But I think I like the idea of, look, I'm consider myself to be very good friends with many of my clients, almost all of them. So we're, first of all, we're national in scope. So it's very difficult to say, hey, let's go hang out every night or whatever. And then even the ones that are local, we're not getting the couples together that often. That doesn't mean that we're not friends. It doesn't mean they don't confide in me. They do. And it's just a different friendship than maybe I have with my high school buddies or some people at jobs I used to work with. I don't define a friendship just on like how we spend time together or the fact that we're going out as couples. There's all different kinds of friendships that you can have that can go very deep without it being defined as a singular thing.
Well, and I just like look if you look look if you look. If you go into like the biggest regrets for men statistically across time, it's always working too much. And so I don't think that's, oh man, I went to too many nice dinners with referral sources or clients and their spouses. I think it's more like I was grinding behind a desk. And
Yeah.
so like it's weird to me that you could take this concept of networking with the work in quotes or business development, turn it into, watching the Bulls play. He's got an excellent jersey behind him for Michael Jordan. Great last name as well. Going to those things, like having fun things, going, how to handle a 3-day conference. Well, when you go to conferences, you'll see the same people over and over again. It can always be like, oh, it's that jerk. Or it can be like, oh my God, hey, it's been 6 months, it's been a year.
Yeah.
What's new in your life? How's it going? Like you can just those small tweaks make this not feel like work. It makes it feel like spending time with people you want to spend time with that also can move the needle for you
Yeah.
business wise.
I mean, I'm about to head out to LA from Chicago to go to the Provisors Conference for group leaders. I'm a group leader here in Chicago for that organization. It's 10,000 members. And I'm very excited to see my clients. I'm very excited to see some of the group leaders from other parts of the country that I've been talking to and engaging with, but maybe I haven't met them in person. So it is work, but it's really a very social thing and a lot of friendships to develop and friendships that I already have that are going to continue to be developed. So it's you take what you can get and develop relationships. And sometimes it's more business focused, and sometimes it's more social. That's okay. I don't have to again define it one way, or another.
Are you familiar with the book Fair Play by Eve Rodsky?
It rings a bell. I don't know that I've read that though. What's that about?
So she's a lawyer, talks about how like we've pushed women into the workforce, but haven't pushed men into the home force in essence.
Hmm.
And so like it breaks down chores, and then there's cards that my wife and I bought that have all the chores, you divvy them up. But
Okay.
the main thing here, she talks about unicorn space. Like you have to have time for your unicorn space, whatever it is. And so like for me, genuinely like reading I've read 130 books so far this year. Like reading is my unicorn space. Most of it's on business, how to run a firm, how to market, how to whatever, or hanging out with people and talking business. Like that's something that I genuinely enjoy. If you don't though, like you can find unicorn space that also has your clients in it. Like you can find a hobby you want to work out. You can find a CrossFit gym in the nicer part of town. You can find a like it's amazing to me the way to have like these multiple impacts of generating work while doing what you want to do anyway, right?
Yeah. No, I mean I'm doing all kinds of events, and I'm doing all kinds, running all kinds of groups, and I enjoy it, right? So it's like find what your joy is, find what you're good at doing, and if you can incorporate that into business and leverage it, that much the better. There's people that love going to conferences, or I have a client going to a his like firm retreat is this weekend or this week. So, how can you, build relationships, but also have some fun when you're there and build some business too. So I think, we just we have to look at things and make decisions about how we want to spend our time and what's going to, benefit us and the people around us.
But also, yes, and for you, I mean, like I know you go fishing with your son a ton. I know you guys went to the Metallica concert a couple months ago. Like, how many of your clients fish or bring up fishing to you? Like how many of them have that shared interest in some manner? And then paddle tennis,
Yeah, paddle tennis, platform tennis. Yeah,
platform tennis. I mean, like, are you playing that with clients? Are you playing that with other people and improvisers? Like, is that
yeah,
something you're using to connect with people while also having fun and getting healthy?
yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I talk about pretty regularly around networking is if you can find an activity that you enjoy where you can also meet really good people. So I play a sport where we're playing against other private clubs in the North Shore of Chicago, and I'm
Hmm.
playing against CEOs, marketing directors, lawyers, managing partners of firms, all different kinds of interesting people. And we drink beer. We sometimes sip some bourbon. We play hard. We have a great time, and then we also get to know each other. So is there a better way than that to meet, high level, new people that I could work with or add value for? Probably not. I mean, that's sort of like the icing on the cake. So I think, everybody, there's a lot of different ways to find business. And again, if there's things you can do that you enjoy, being on a board, representing a charity, raising money, political, whatever it might be, or dealing with people that are all on the same side as you, that's okay. So I think you just gotta get out there and be creative about where you're spending your time and who it's spent with, so that you're getting the most out of it.
Yeah. Well, so I listen, if there's one thing in society that I could, well, no, if there's one thing I could change, if there's one like simple business thing I could change, it's multitasking. Multitasking is stupid. It doesn't work. There's nothing that supports it. It takes up to 27 minutes to get your brain fully caught up as you're going back and forth between checking your phone, whatever. Hate it. What I love though is the multi-impact.
Mm,
So, going for a walk with referral sources, I get 10,000 steps a day. It's a great multi-impact. Or doing a phone call while I'm going for a walk,
yeah,
playing paddle tennis with a bunch of these other potential clients and referral sources. Like, forget multitasking, but find the things where you can have multiple benefits to your life in the same instance.
yeah.
I love eating. Trying out new restaurants with potential referral sources, great, which is probably why I have to do the 10,000 steps to not
Yeah,
keel over. But like, to me, it makes me feel so much more accomplished. I can see results in multiple areas in the same way. And then it still gives me time to show up the right way for my family because I'm not, trying to squeeze them in between billing 10,000 hours of work I hate behind a desk.
yeah.
Right? Is that
No,
the
exactly.
is that the goal for everybody? Or should be. I don't know.
It's Yeah, I mean, it's almost like repurposing content, right? We do a podcast like this, and then
Hmm.
we get the video, we get the audio, we get the transcript, we can create articles. Like there's all this value and benefit from creating content. And I think you can do the same thing when you're involved and engaged in person to person Zoom events, things like that.
I love it. Well, and you can take a picture playing paddle tennis. Or, I mean, I know you've got a ton of pictures of you with your son catching fish that are larger than the two of you
Yeah. Yeah, we got
and
some.
whatnot. I mean, like, you can create content from living
Yeah.
the life that you enjoy with people you want to spend it with.
Yeah. I mean, I try to create content that will resonate with people, but if I recognize that fishing and business development are very similar, and I happen to have a picture of my son and I on the post holding a fish, it's eye catching. It's something I'm proud of, and I'm educating people on the benefits of business development seen through the lens of a story like how to fish and how to catch big fish. That's all I think what people are looking for in content is something that they can connect to and resonates with them, and it shows a personal side of my life that I think they need to see to know kind of who I am as a person, as in addition to just knowing that I'm some lawyer coach guy.
Well, and I don't know if you've posted this, but like, they're very similar, right? You put multiple lines in the water, your referral
Yeah,
sources,
no,
looking
no.
for
Well,
fish. You
trust
can't
me,
just leave it there.
that
Like,
article is frank because I also gave credit to my stepfather, Saul, who taught me how to fish
Saul
21 years
Goodman.
ago. They have that article framed in their house.
Oh,
So
there we go.
yeah, it's front and center at the Lewin household.
Yeah, but it's true. And ultimately the fact that it's true is because you care about those two things. You start seeing the comparisons between them in a way that I think makes the business side of it so much more approachable or understandable for somebody.
Well, the funny thing is that we're talking about integrating life and work-life balance and integration and all this stuff. And I think that's just another area that you can, if you can live your life and yet take things from your life that you can incorporate into your business, right? Like writing skills or video, or like you see people doing video all the time where they're holding their dog or they're walking down the street. I'm sure I've seen you do this like while you're driving, and I'm like, don't drive in
No,
video.
never while
Never.
I'm
Okay, just
driving.
checking. You did something like you were walking along, talking
Oh
and stuff,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
but
all the time.
but I think that's why people are taking in the content that way, because we're integrating a personal, appearance of somebody, but they're talking about business, but during their like quote unquote personal time, and kind of showing their personality along with it.
Yeah, well, and it's like that, I think goes to what you talked about from the sales perspective, right? Like if a
Yeah.
client has already followed you on social media or binged 450 episodes of the show or something like that, like they feel like they know you coming into that meeting.
Oh
And then
yeah.
it's really, you're able to have that two-way conversation instead of trying to sell yourself, trying to, for them to see how cheap they can get it, whatever happens in other pitch meetings, let's
Yeah.
call them. So anything that we missed on this topic, anything else you want to add that I,
I mean, I think the one thing that we may have missed or that I just want to put a fine point on is that, like, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that business development and growing a book of business is for everyone. It's not. There's reasons why lawyers go into in-house and become GCs or assistant GCs. There's lawyers that have worked for 30 years and never had to go on a pitch meeting. They never had to do the networking. They never had to go to the conferences. They just got so much. They're just so good at what they did or do that they just been fed work and they've built plenty of money. They're never gonna have to worry about money along. But I'm just suggesting that for many attorneys today and the way the world has changed, that to incorporate client development into your life is one of the best ways to control your future and to have that work-life balance or integration or whatever we want to call it, and not be beholden to a firm or be beholden to a few partners to feed you work, where if something happens, you're at risk. Like that's what we saw that in the recession of 2008-9. It certainly can happen again. We've got a crazy election coming up. Who knows what's going to happen with the world? We got wars going on. How are you as a lawyer protecting your career and your family? And this is one way to do that.
well, and look, I don't disagree with anything you said, but I want to add AI. Now that you've got all the case management systems starting to incorporate it, what if law firms wake up tomorrow and say, hey, we can
Yeah.
get rid of 15% of our workforce? Are they going to cut the person that has a portable book of business who's generating more work than their thing? Or are they going to cut the person who's just grinding out the hours that now can get ground out by an AI for $0 or
Yeah.
way cheaper?
Yeah, I mean, especially the low level jobs that are being done at the associate level, paralegals, the associate level, those jobs are gonna, just like, hey, there used to not be tractors. There was just horses and buggies, and now there's tractors, and now there's robots that are doing it. So everything's evolving, and if you're not evolving with it, then you're going the wrong direction.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you mentioned there. Like, the biggest thing for me is I want people to intentionally design the life that they want. I don't really care what that is as long as they're not being racist, sexist, whatever. Like, but you need to figure out what you want and then you start building the support structure you need. So,
Mhm.
my law firm might look a lot different because I don't want to practice law. I want to generate the business and make business decisions. So I've got my wife as the lawyer, we've got of counsels to handle the cases, all of that. Whereas somebody else who wants the book of business might have a larger marketing team than me. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways to go about it, but the
Yeah.
more that you are intentional, the more you enjoy the journey, the more that you enjoy the process, the more that you enjoy the whole thing.
Yeah, it sounds like you almost start with the end in mind. Like this is what I want. This is how I see it. I don't know how to do that, by the way, but this is what this is what I want. As I was saying, and then work backwards with a
Yeah.
coach like you or me or others to try to then fulfill that prophecy of getting to the. It might take you a few years, but to get to where you really want to be in your life and with your practice. Again, you get one shot at this thing, and you really want to blow 5 or 10 years or even more because you didn't invest in yourself and get help and just figured, hey, I'm a smart guy. I was taught to, figure it out myself, and I'm just going to keep struggling year after year until it happens.
What a good lead in. So, for those people, actually, yeah, for those people who heard that and now are like, that guy for me is Steve, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website is fretzin.com, Fretzin. You can email me at steve@fretzin.com. And of course, check out not just my website, but my podcast, Be That Lawyer, on all the major platforms. And I also write for Above the Law. I've got 4 or 5 articles under my belt in the last couple months, and another one coming out soon. So just want to be your resource any way I can, whether we work directly together or I just am someone that you're utilizing to get ahead. I'm thrilled.
Awesome. And for everybody who watch and listen to this, I appreciate you. None of this would happen without you all. We're really trying to drive as much help as possible to you. So if you got questions, I know Steve's happy to answer them. I know I'm happy to answer them. And then we hope to see you back here next week. We'll have Jay Ruane on. That'll be on November 12th. For those of you that don't know Jay, Jay has a story of going to a hockey game and creating $100 million case out of a hockey game. So like that's a pretty good have a life, enjoy your life referral story. But also Jay is just like a very specifically awesome marketing person that really figures out how to make it make sense and how to make it make dollars for law firms as well. So really excited to chat with Jay next week. But Steve, if anybody has been listening to this and they totally zoned out, what would be the biggest takeaway for them? What would be the most important thing to help more lawyers run a business they can be proud of and live a life that's even better?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and I've said this before, so if you've heard this before, I apologize, but there's the practice of law and there's the game of business development and marketing, and one of them you learned and one of them you didn't. You have to become a student of the game of the business of law, and you put those two things together. Great lawyer and someone who has begun or is currently running a successful law practice. That's where a lot of the happiness comes in. It's where there's a lot of struggles and challenges and difficulties along the way because you haven't become a student of it. That is where we find lawyers who are like, hey, I need to get out of this, or I need to go find a job, or whatever it might be. And so I would say just always be a student of the game of business development.
Yeah, and I love that. I love the one thing I want to highlight from that. It's so weird to me, all these people like, oh, but if I make that drastic change, I'm a failure. And my perspective is, no, you're a failure if you keep doing what you hate doing for another 20 years. Like that's the failure. If that means closing down your firm, so be it. If that means, focusing on the marketing and hiring a lawyer, so be it. If that means focusing on the lawyering and hiring markets, like I don't care what the answer is. I care that you are working towards what you want. And I am more upset if you never try to change it, knowing you hate what's currently happening.
Yeah.
Cool. Steve, always a pleasure.
Jordan, thank you, man. I appreciate you having me as your first guest. And, I'm here for you, on the show and off the show, whatever you need, my friend. I appreciate you.
There we go. We'll have you back on in 449 episodes. So we can do the 450 here.
There we go.